are tuning in for the very first time. We hope that you will like being with us enough to become a regular viewer. This is a program devoted to real people and real life. If you are an avid reader of mysteries, you will certainly know the name of my guest today, Ken Follett. His name came to me because I was long interested in the amazing rescue of a man from Iran, and the head of the company who sent in his people to rescue him, Ross Perot and EDS, contacted Ken Follett to do the write-up of that, and he agreed, and I did read it, and I've been a fan since. But he is here for a very special reason, and that is a very wonderful man at Saginaw Valley University wrote a paper on his works, and as a result of that, Ken Follett, is donating something like 44,000. Did I hear? Is that correct?
It sounds right.
It's monumental just to get 44,000 pieces of paper, concepts, maybe storyboards. I don't know exactly. From the years 1978 to 1998 to Saginaw Valley University. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. Martha Graham, a choreographer and dancer, talked about divine dissatisfaction and heavenly unrest as keeping her marching. Is that something you could understand?
You know, I'm kind of a down-to-earth writer, rather practical, and I'm not a very spiritual person. So a lot of my friends talk about inspiration and talk about the muse, and when they're writing, they feel that it's a process of getting in contact with something spiritual. And I'm rather the other way. I'm a great planner. I like to have, I like to know at the beginning of the day what scene I'm going to write and what's going to happen in that scene, so that the process of writing it is simply a question of realizing and bringing to life a story that I've already planned. So work for me, and what is driving me on is a kind of, what drives me on is a kind of wish to entertain people. If I hadn't been a writer, I might have been a song and dance man, you know, a few jokes,
I
little
see
tap
the
dancing.
glint in your eye. Right.
So no, heavenly dissatisfaction doesn't ring a chord with me.
I understand that it takes you roughly 2 years to write a book, and that the first year is spent in research and organization, which sounds quite methodical to me. Are you methodical in your personal life as well?
Yes, I think my friends and family would say I am methodical, in fact our children laugh at us for being so methodical, although I notice that as they age they get more and more like us in this respect. But yes, I plan my day, I plan my trips. We have, because we're both busy people, we have our kind of holidays roughly mapped out for about 2 years in advance. And so I guess you would have to say I'm methodical, yeah.
What has life taught you that you didn't expect?
When I started to write, I thought there would be some things about writing that would be important and challenging, and some things that would be easy and I could gloss over.
Right.
And part of the transition for me from being an unsuccessful writer, which I was for some years, to being a successful writer was realizing that in every area of the book I had to do my best. You know, I concentrated in those early days on action and drama, violence, very passionate interactions of different kinds. And I realized that I had to, no matter how action-oriented a story was, if you don't care about the people in that story, then you don't care about the action either. So I realized that character was something I would have to give my very best to. And in fact, everything, description of landscapes, description of people, I had to give my very best in every area, and even then, that might not be good enough.
But in writing all sorts of people, it's just like living with all sorts of people. Some you like, some you don't like. How have you learned to like the characters you don't like in your books and also in life?
Well, for a character to be realistic and believable for the reader, I think the writer has to put a little bit of himself or herself into every character, even the bad ones. So the bad guys who are most successful in my books tend to be ones who have something in common with me, something that I can identify with. I think every character in a story has to have something of the writer's self. Otherwise, the character seems too created, too artificial.
So your latest book, White Out, has a little bit of philosophy I want to ask you about. The protagonist has been ditched by her longtime live-in of 8 years and encounters him later on, and he's not very pleasant to her. And the aside is, you said, it's very hard to forgive someone you've in essence wronged, right? Because you
Yes.
see some aspect of yourself, the way you act cowardly or however, that you don't
Yes.
want to remember.
Yes. Yes, I think that's very true. I think when somebody's done a wrong to you, it's easy to forgive them. But when you have done a wrong to someone else, then every time you see them, they remind you of your weakness and your failure. And that can make you angry. And when I was thinking about this marriage in Whiteout, the failed marriage, it's over by the beginning of the story between Tony Gallo, who's the hero of the story, and her husband.
The heroine, right.
Well, I say hero because heroine suggests a kind of sidekick to the guy. Well, she's the central character.
Oh, I like that correction. I'm glad you said that.
So I call her, when I have a woman as the main character in the story, I call her the hero. Anyway, when I was thinking about her marriage and why it would have failed and why her husband would still be mean to her, I thought of that. I thought that when he saw her, he would realize how badly he let her down, and he would be angry. And instead of being angry with himself, he would turn it on her.
Have you ever had that experience yourself?
Well, I've observed it, I think, looking at people and thinking, well, why does he hate him so much? And that is sometimes the explanation. In the past, there's some wrong, and the person who's still hating is the perpetrator rather than the victim.
Is there a way back from that?
Oh, what a good question. Of course, in the story, in Whiteout, they don't find a way back. There must be. There's always a way back. I'm not sure I know what it is.
Very interesting. You travel all over the world, I'm sure. Are you a different person in different countries? Or different aspects come out?
I suppose when I go to France, I'm even more of a sybarite than I am normally, and I go to the land of gourmet food and wine. What am I when I come to the United States?
Yes, what are you?
I'm kind of, well, of course, mostly I come here for business reasons. I come here to do interviews and to meet my editors and agents. But when I just come here to see friends, I guess I'm a party animal in the States, because I suppose I arrive and my friends throw parties for me.
So that's nice.
It's great, yes, it's wonderful. I love coming to the States.
Would you spend that much time partying at home?
No, no, in London, what do I do in London? In London, I'm kind of a culture vulture. I always go to concerts and the theatre and exhibitions and so on. So it's a good theory. I must remember that, different aspects of a personality coming out in different countries. I'm going to use that in a book.
Oh, well, I hope so. I often think that each of us has a unique relationship with another person because some aspect of ourselves bonds or doesn't bond with that, even in marriages or friendships or work relationships or what have you. And I know you've been married twice, and of course I'd like to ask you, we're a different person in each marriage, and that's your option to answer. But I say that because a friend of mine got divorced and remarried, and she came to me and she said, the problems are the same, you know. She said, if I had known that, I would never have gotten divorced. And so...
Well, that is the striking thing about a second marriage, and a second marriage is very educational for that reason. Of course, it is different from the first marriage, and that in some ways that can make you very happy. But when you find yourself having exactly the same problems, with a completely different person, you have to say to yourself, does that mean that it's me? And of course it is. So you learn a great deal about yourself by being married twice. Not that I'm recommending it necessarily, but it certainly is educational.
What do you do with that knowledge then?
Well, I suppose knowledge of yourself is always valuable. You find yourself behaving in certain ways and you think, wait a minute, I used to think this was okay, but now maybe I'd better ask myself whether it is. Am I actually right? Now, we're having this argument. I had exactly the same argument with her. Is it possible that I'm wrong? And of course it is possible.
Is it hard to accept you're wrong?
No, I don't think so. I think actually, in the end, that kind of knowledge is very welcome, because you know, you escape from patterns. Once you begin to know yourself, you escape from patterns. I think that's all part of the process of growing up, which never really ends, does
No,
it?
that was a surprise to me too. I thought at 21 I would be up. Then I was like 14 at the time. What a surprise. What have mistakes taught you?
Now that's a good question. When I look back over my life, I don't see it in terms of mistakes, really. I mean, well, for example, when I was 18, I got my girlfriend pregnant, and I was I was in my first term at university. And now, conventionally, you would look back on that as a mistake. That's how most people would see it. But when I look back, we got married. We were very hard up, but we had this lovely baby boy who we adored, and we stayed married for 17 years. So I know that's not a mistake. It's a road I took. I wouldn't have chosen the road, that particular road, but since it happened to me, you know, I had a good time, and my first wife and I are still friends. We're fond of one another. I would do anything for her. And we have 2 wonderful children. So that's not really a mistake, but it is a mistake. And people would say it's a mistake, but I don't see it that way.
Unintended choice.
Yeah.
Right. How do you get along with a person you've been previously married with? I mean, how so many people argue or have difficulties.
Well, of course, to be candid, we did not have a problem that many people do have, which is money. There was, because my books are so popular, there was plenty of money to go around. There was enough money for everybody, so we didn't argue about that. I think the important thing is to remember, when you split up with somebody, you're always angry. Somebody feels betrayed. The other person feels that they're being treated very harshly. And friends and relatives take sides, and people get angry. And it's important to think always of what you valued in the person that you're splitting up from, and to remember how in love you were at the start, and how great she was, you know, how funny and how sexy, and how you loved walking down the street with her on your arm. And then you realize that you're arguing about, you know, whether the kids are going to visit you on Friday or Saturday, and that's trivial. You can resolve something like that with somebody you were that fond of. You can get over these little problems. The other thing we didn't do is we didn't have lawyers.
Oh.
I never met my divorce lawyer. I mean, you have to have lawyers, theoretically, to do the court stuff. But we didn't take any notice of them. And we made a deal. My then wife, Mary, said, I know what I want. And I said, okay, what is it? And she told me. And I said, okay. And so we never quarreled about that. And the lawyers wanted to take sides and try and chip away. And we said, no, this is none of your business. We've settled this. All you have to do is be like a paralegal and go to court and get the papers signed. And I think that helped us.
Immensely. Lawyers often worsen a situation.
Yeah.
Very, very much so.
Particularly when it's emotional. Lawyers are combative people, aren't they? if they weren't combative, they wouldn't have gone into such a combative profession. And when a marriage is breaking up, the last thing you need is a contest.
Right. When you started out, you had really no resources, and now you have a lot of resources. Did you get used to the comfort level of resources?
Very quickly. Embarrassingly fast. Yes, I mean, I suppose I was always a person who had dreamed of, the champagne lifestyle. In fact, in the early days, when I was trying to make it as a writer, I published several books, and I would get very small amounts of money in advance. I would get £100 or £200 from the publisher. But every time I got one of those checks, I would buy a bottle of champagne, which in those days cost £5. It's like $9. French champagne, $9 a bottle. Those were the days. And because it was money, I'd made some money that wasn't in the family budget. So I had these kind of tastes really quite early on. And I liked the south of France. I liked, very fond of France, and particularly the Côte d'Azur. So I kind of, I'd been thinking about this stuff for a while before it happened to me.
Hoping for it.
Absolutely, and fantasizing about it.
Well, I understand, though, you're of the, as they say, the left in
Sure,
England.
yeah.
How does that work into your champagne life philosophy?
Well, one of the things that bedevils a left-wing party is the image of left-wingers as kind of martyrs, people who don't have any fun, people who wear sandals in the winter, and that kind of thing. And so Barbara and I, when we got together and I became more active in politics, we were kind of a symbol of the fact that you could be a member of the Labour Party, which is the kind of British equivalent of the Democrats. You could be in that party and you could still have fun, and you could still drink champagne and wear nice clothes and drive nice cars and all that. Because, of course, if you try and set yourself up as a popular party, you cannot be the party of self-denial. The party of self-denial never won an election, right?
Right.
So that was how it worked. I mean, we symbolized the fact that that picture of what you would call a liberal
Right.
is a false picture, and that we liberals have a lot of fun.
If I understand it correctly, one of the things one likes about the left is one believes that people should be more equal in income and things, more materialistic things. But wouldn't then you be tempted to sort of donate your money and have that £30,000 income or whatever the average is over there these days?
Well, I mean, one answer to that is, of course, that we do give away quite a lot of money for
No, but I
charity.
meant, you know what
But
I
all
mean.
of it. Why don't I give
Not
away
all of it,
all
but you know, most all of it.
Yeah, well, first of all, it wouldn't make much difference. And secondly, nowadays, 100 years ago, when all these left-wing parties were started,
Right.
there was a great mass of people whose lives were really unacceptably poor.
Right.
And the things like the trade union movement and left-wing parties have actually changed that picture.
Mm-hmm.
And now really the focus is on opportunity. The
George Bush.
Right. Well, I know everybody.
Well, but he talks opportunity. I'm surprised the Labour talks of opportunity in England. Not that I should be
I
surprised,
think,
perhaps
well, I
uneducated about it.
I think everybody uses the word, some more
But what does it
sincere-
mean?
some more sincerely than others. So, for example, the important thing now, I think, for a left-wing party is that children in areas of low prosperity should have schools that are every bit as good as the schools that the rich kids go to. Now, George Bush doesn't believe in that, but I do. And if I may say so, I think it's not just a question of money. I'm chair of governors of a school
Good for
in
you.
a poor neighborhood, and I can tell you that it's one of the most challenging things I've done in my life.
Exactly. Exactly. Because a lot of it's culture. What did you teach your children by way of what we call values in the United States, or philosophy of life, or how to lead their life when they were growing up, or even later?
It's quite hard to know what you taught your children. I think your children don't learn from you the things that you say to them explicitly, but they do learn from you kind of underlying things. And I suppose what I taught my children, I don't remember ever speaking to them about this, was tolerance. The view of an attitude to life which accepts everybody. And sometimes that comes back at you in unexpected ways. I remember a conversation in which I said something rather rude about the head of a drama school that my daughter was attending. And I hope you won't be offended by the word I used, but I said that this woman was an old dyke. And my kids jumped on me. You can't say things like that. What has her sexual preference got to do with anything? And I was quite taken aback of it. I realized they were right, absolutely right to pick me up. It was an impolite and very intolerant thing to say. But of course, they got that attitude from me.
Right.
What they're doing is reflecting my own attitudes back at me.
Your
and
lapses.
saying, you're not living up to what you believe in.
Did they mimic some of your less desirable traits too, other than that one lapse?
Well, yeah, I suppose so. I have 2 children and 3 stepchildren, and a nephew who we also more or less brought up. And my own 2 children, if they have a weakness, it's in the area of greed. My son is, like me, a little heavy and very fond of food and drink. My daughter has no interest in booze at all, but is a chocolate lover. Mm-hmm. And so, like me, both of my children struggle with their weight.
Not a bad thing to do.
Well, there are worse things.
There are worse things. I'm always taken by people's lives and what turns they've taken. Well, you've done a lot. You've written a lot. You've traveled a lot. You have children. You have had marriages. You have friendships, and we know you have parties. What were the experiences you would like now, the life you'd like, because of the experiences you've had?
Well, looking back, what has brought me, of all the things in my life, what has brought me the most joy is the children. My children and stepchildren, and now grandchildren. And that isn't something that I would have anticipated as a young man. I had vaguely thought that I probably would be married and have children, but what was on my mind was things like being a success and making money and all that kind of thing, all those ambitious things. And looking back, I mean, it's great to be a success and it's great to make money, but the best thing of all is these kids who are now all adults. And, you know, if I'm going out to dinner, which I do most evenings of the week, I would much rather go out to dinner with my family than with, you know, politicians and celebrities and so on.
Why?
That's a difficult question to answer. You know, why do you become so deeply attached? And I have stepchildren too. 3 of mine are stepchildren, and I'm very profoundly attached to them. But I suppose why? Well, they're funny and they're smart, and they know me very profoundly, so I don't get away with anything. They're interesting to talk to. They share some of my interests. My son and I are both very interested in Shakespeare, particularly Hamlet. And my daughter is very interested in music. She's a professional singer. And I have a stepdaughter who's a writer, television writer. So we have lots to talk about.
I would think also that they treat you as a real person. They know all sides of you, or many of them, and you have history together. Long history in the case of the first 2 children. And all of us need people in our lives to bear witness to us, you know. I mean, that ties, I feel anyway, it ties me to people because of the years. Anyway, thank you so much. I want to thank Ken Follett today. We've learned a great deal from him. As methodical as he is in his writing, he is methodical in his life. He aimed high. He was careful about what he did. He worked hard on his career of writing. He was lucky enough to be a huge success. He did not feel guilty about it, but enjoyed the champagne and everything that came with it. but he did not abandon who he was experientially as a child of modest means. He cares greatly for the common manners involved with the Labor Party, but he doesn't feel that you should not enjoy the good life even though you are of the Labor Party. And I also noticed that he donates his time by being head of a school because he feels education is one way, the way perhaps, one way that people can have a better life if they get a better education. He also spoke of the importance of family, that after you've done it all, the ties that bind are those. And he also talked about the learning process of how you become who you are, and that oftentimes you repeat, as in a marriage, the same problems keep coming up, and there you have to say to yourself, oh my goodness, is it me? And so he is a person who is actually someone who enjoys life, someone, in my opinion, who seeks, but someone who also has the willingness to evaluate and to think more deeply than the surface. Witness the conversation we had about why sometimes you cannot forgive a person you've done wrong. So we will not be seeing him around because he does not live in our area, but should you run into him in England or anyway, please, please thank him for appearing, and remember, kindness counts. Today, go out and do something kind for someone you know and someone you don't know, and do it again tomorrow. And we'll see you next time. Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.